I left off at Aristotle the last time that I recorded a video. And while we're in the Greek period, what you may have noticed as a theme between Plato and Aristotle is that, during the classical Greek period as a whole, they were really struggling with this link or the distinction between rhetoric and philosophy. What was it that helped us come to know? What was the ontology? Plato, of course, said that the ontology was dialectic, but Aristotle said that there had to be a blend of rhetoric and dialectic in order for us to know the truth, because there was very little point in practicing a science that only brought out one truth or one interpretation of the truth. That wasn't enough, that we needed more. So this idea of the truth was not important to a certain group, or at least it was only seen as convenient. And that group, of course, is the sophists. They just felt that if you knew the truth and the truth was going to work for you as a good argument, then by all means use it, and that's helpful. But if, for example, let's just say you were guilty and you were going into court, while you being innocent would have been fantastic, it doesn't really matter, because what matters in the court is that I can prove that you are innocent without it being true. One thing you might notice is that that is actually the way we still operate today. For example, the video that was out about Hillary Clinton, it was a recording, actually, a voice recording of her laughing at the way she got a guy who was accused of child molestation off of the hook in his trial. Couple things that we need to keep in mind is that the American court system, at least the current one, requires that all public defenders defend their clients to the best of their ability and to give them the best defense possible. Even though the clients don't pay, you still have to give them the best defense possible. Hillary Clinton was working at that time for essentially the public defense. Legal aid does public defense, but more importantly, a judge assigned her to defend this particular client. What's interesting about that is that she actually asked to not have to defend the guy because she knew that he was guilty. But the judge denied the request and said, no, you have to do it. And so from then on, she had to find a way to, quote, prove, close quote, that this guy was innocent, or at least not guilty of the crime that he was being accused of. So the absurdity of that we would require someone to go to the defense of somebody else that we knew was guilty is, ethically speaking, ridiculous. And yet it's codified as a part of our system. And so I would sort of laugh at that absurdity as well, that I can't believe this worked sort of laugh, but it would still be a laugh of some sort, because it's ridiculous to utilize tools of human communication that way. Or is it? Remember that the sophists, and particularly Isocrates, who I'm going to talk about in this particular video, were around close to 2,500 years ago. We've been making that same battle ever since. So this relationship between rhetoric and philosophy, or rhetoric and the search for truth, the ontology of the truth, still a big question even today. Isocrates had a real problem with this. He actually really was mad at the sophists. He was a sophist himself. He taught in their school. He made a lot of money, well, supposedly. And then he opened up his own school. Because the thing about Isocrates was that he really was not interested in the money-making, lawyering side. He was interested in the side of sophistry, of teaching people how to move up and down in the class system, or to defend themselves, or to understand the government. So he really wanted to practice the tools of rhetoric as they should be taught with ethics. He still didn't think that dialectic and finding the truth was nearly as important as proving the truth. He just believed that you should do it with some level of ethic. And so, in Against the Sophists, we really get Isocrates' attack on the sophists and why they were, inherently not that great for rhetoric. But in Antidosis, we get his defense of himself. What is he accused of? He's accused of not doing what he was supposed to do, which was to donate money back for building ships or for a monument to himself or something that rich people do. And he, obviously said, look, I'm just not that rich because I already don't agree with the sophists. I've already told you that. But more importantly, we shouldn't give that back that way. We should give back by teaching our students how to participate in the government, teaching our students how to practice rhetoric in an ethical and reasonable way that does not violate the truth or disrespect the truth in a certain way, because what comes out of our mouths ends up being the story, ends up being the truth. If you've ever read the book, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, you'll experience the same exact thing where he starts like every fourth chapter with, but here's the real story, or here's what really happened, or now this is the truth. The point of O'Brien's book is in part to sort of let us really empathize with the trials of war, particularly the Vietnam War, but part of it is just to teach us that whenever we tell a story, it's true because it's out there, and therefore it's a true story. Doesn't mean that it represents something that actually happened, which is the way that we define the truth, but the fact that it was stated in the first place impacts your world in such a way that now it becomes a truth. And so Isocrates was really ahead of his time in thinking about rhetoric in this way. And he was also accused of something that Socrates was accused of. I mean, we could debate whether or not Socrates was a real person all we want, but the truth of it is this. Socrates and Isocrates are stories of people who, in Socrates' case, did not even acknowledge rhetoric as a distinction from philosophy, but Isocrates who did. Both of them were basically state murdered. Both of them were accused of corrupting the youth. The reason they were accused of corrupting the youth is because both of them were teaching the youth how to think. They were teaching them how to not just follow the rules that the elders had already come up with and that tradition taught us was true, but to actually critically think about the actions and speech acts that they engaged. That was dangerous. We're going to enter another time when speech is dangerous, especially if you're trying to seek out the truth here in a little bit. But Isocrates and the sophists, one of them cared about the truth and therefore left the group. But the concept of truth is basically irrelevant because rhetoric isn't there to find the truth, represent the truth, or anything else. It's sort of there to be the truth. So now we're going to skip about 200 years and move on to the Romans. We'll do that in the next video.